Everybody turn your camera on now, please. 3 people don't have their camera on. All right, so I want to welcome everybody to 50 Shades of Red. We are bringing you a very unique discussion today, not a debate, where I have tried to bring up multiple influencers from Twitter, from Instagram, from Facebook that have differing views on police brutality. Most of the people on this panel are conservative. It's important to note there are some independents and even a liberal on the panel as well, and hopefully we'll be able to hear from them and their position on it. But the main goal of tonight's discussion is to unite us under the umbrella that we're all Black in America, and that there is a issue, not necessarily a racial issue, but there is an issue regarding the police and how they are policing our community specifically. So what we'll do is we'll go ahead and hear from everybody. Briefly, I'm just going to introduce everyone we have here. We have my work husband, co-host, Solomon. He's here. We have David Winkler, who has a podcast. I believe it's Hardline, New Jersey. We have Hotep Jesus, the infamous. We have Jeff Charles, our token writer who belongs in the Times, just, right-winged. We have Mr. MAGA, Bryson Gray. We have Shekinah, I don't want to call you Mrs. MAGA, but that's where we're going with it. We have Wayne Dupree, our elder, the #1 from the Wayne Dupree Show. Please check him out. We have Osaiga, you're the South Carolina director of Brexit? Is that correct?
No, I'm a North Carolina member relations director.
Perfect. Thank you. From Blexit, everybody's favorite organization. We have Devin Jones with us today. And then lastly, we have Chris. Chris, clarify for me, what is your political standing if you have one? If you don't, that's fine as well. Unmute yourself. 1 second, hold on. All right, we're gonna come back to Chris because he's muted, and I need him to.
Sorry,
there we go.
I don't support either party. I look at both of them largely as just they're there to protect certain interests and to play with people's minds. So yeah, I couldn't say I'm a conservative or a liberal. I would not attach either of those labels to myself.
Perfect. Okay, thank you. We have Lonnie Hooks III here representing. Lonnie, I believe if you want to go ahead and introduce yourself, are you a state rep? Are you running for a position?
Yeah, was running for office. Now I'm working with regional directors here, Republican Party of Florida and RNC here in Florida.
Okay, great. So we'll probably have a couple more people filter in. But yeah, let's just get started. Who wants to start the discussion off? Given the current events from the last few weeks, we've had multiple men of color being brutalized by the police. And I believe there was even an instance that was represented yesterday in New York where there was an officer of color being the aggressor, putting his knee on someone's neck. So I only reference that to say, while we're seeing things in the media that show white officers particularly being the aggressors, I don't think it's a race thing all the way around. I think race is a huge part of this, yes. But I also believe it's just a police situation. I think it's something that is happening within the police force that has a trickle-down effect into politics because, they have to be funded at some point. And I think that power is what is making it acceptable to do what we're seeing play out in the media. So with that being said, who wants to go first? Wayne, I feel like you should be going first because you're the pro at this.
Yeah, the pro. Can you hear me, everybody?
Yes.
Good. Honestly, I'm humbled and honored to be here. Thank you so much for having me. One of the things that this all brings me back to, I'm from a little town called Cambridge, Maryland. And if many of you don't know about Cambridge, Maryland, a year before I was born, it went through a whole lot of racial breakdown problem situations. The Black Panther came in, and he basically said, if y'all don't want to make changes to this town and whatnot, we'll burn it down. Well, situation is that the race relations were so bad that one side of the Black community started to burn, and the white fire people came. They brought their trucks, but they didn't show the Black community members how to use the water truck or anything. So basically, the place just burned. My father was a pastor in the community at the time, and you know, my mom always told me, listen, your father couldn't shut his mouth. Your father was out there, and he was opening up his church for a whole lot of NAACP meetings and stuff. He didn't know how to shut his mouth. We had National Guard standing outside the house. But the way that I grew up, and this is only a couple years later, because I really didn't know about this until I left Cambridge, was that when I was growing up, I had a friend who was white. This is only a couple years after the town. Now remember, the main street in that town was called Race Street. On one side, you had the Black side. On the other side, you had the white side. And this is all, I mean, this is what was there. But when I was growing up, my best friend was white. We didn't know anything else. And the police, I didn't grow up afraid of the police. All this stuff that we're seeing out now and what we're seeing on TV, I didn't grow up seeing it. And it's crazy to see this stuff now and to see what happened to Ahmaud Arbery or the young lady that they shot up when they went into the house, or George. And those are just the new ones. Both of them. The young lady that was inside of her house playing games with her child that was shot through her window. I don't know what these police are going through right now. I don't. I know what we're going through. And the more that you see it, the more you can't be silent, even if you were before. You can't be silent now. Again, I'm telling you, I mean, for me, I'm not afraid of the police, but God damn, I mean, I'm looking at the stuff now. I'm like,
thank you so much for that, Wayne. Bryson, I know you've been like pretty vocal on your stance regarding, you know, the police in general and just pro-police. I mean, I want to say up until recent events, I'm more so sided with police personally, just because I know a lot of officers in my family, you know, and you don't want to think that a few of them are spoiling the bunch, right? But at this point, how can we not? It's happening in every major city in America. Bryson, what do you have to say about that?
You say, how can we not? And it's easy, you just don't. The simple truth is there are good people, there are bad people. Police officers are people. This is simple. So if there are a bunch of people that are police officers, of course there are going to be negative things that happen because we're humans. We make mistakes. These things that happen. Some people are racist. Some situations we don't even know if they're racist or not, but people don't paint it as such anyway. But the truth of the matter is you just said it, you can't let a few spoil the bunch, because white people, I've talked to white supremacists, they look at us all like thugs, and we know that we all aren't thugs. So if we don't like that, we can't do the same thing, because that make us hypocrites. So just acknowledge that there are good people and bad people. And unless it's, I mean, just the numbers don't match up with the hysteria. I mean, that's really what it is. The numbers don't match up with the hysteria, and that's the truth. These things happen every 4 years. There's always every few years in a situation like this. And we dedicate all our energy towards it. But and I think we can redirect it to something else. But there are good people and bad people. That's it.
Dad, I know you wanted to say something. Unmute yourself. There you go.
All right, there we go. Yeah, I mean, Bryson's right. I mean, it's never possible to tell exactly how much race plays into this. I mean, there are studies, the studies on police shootings and police brutality in general are mixed. You've got some that say that it's about even. You've got some that say it happens to Black people more. Now, when it comes to police brutality that includes non-fatalities, that has been proven that it does happen to us more. But there are other factors that go into that. I think racism could play a part, but it's also the fact that it also has to do with how police are incentivized, because in a lot of these law enforcement organizations, you've got quotas. So if a police officer has a quota, whether it's official or unofficial, and they're being pressured to go out there and make arrests and have more contact with certain people, who are they going to choose? They're not going to go into Beverly Hills. They're not going to go into the Hamptons. They're going to go into Baltimore. They're going to go into LA. They're going to go where people have lesser income and less resources to fight against the government. I think the focus here, more than race, should be the statism aspect. I think that 99.9% of people who criticize the police don't think that every single police officer is bad. But when they are, it needs to be addressed. These are government officials who have been given the authority to violate our rights when they deem it necessary. We do not elect these people, we elect their bosses. So I think one of the first steps to really dealing with this issue is focusing on the local government. Because in all of these cases, you're going to see areas where certain laws and certain loopholes allowed the police to even have the confrontation in the first place. I know we're limited on time, so I'm not going to list them all off, but it happens all the time in the media. And I can understand why people want to counter the media narrative, because the corporate media lies. The corporate media is the enemy of the people. So, but that being said, we still need to make sure we're looking at this in a sober way, that we're still thinking critically, that we're not just blindly believing whoever's narrative. You look at the facts on the ground. You look at the laws that are there. You look at what happened, and you make your assessment based on that.
I agree, Jeff. And I think a good example of that is Jussie Smollett, right? People ran with that narrative when it initially came out and later had to eat their words on it. So I think that is a good perspective to have. I'm going to go ahead and pass the floor over to Dev.
I was trained in federal law enforcement. I was a master in arms in the Navy, and we were the first group that actually received, the same type of training that like the Capitol Police and different people like that received. And one of the biggest things was de-escalation, which I never see. Well, I'm not gonna say never see, but oftentimes you don't see that happening in the Black community. That's one of the biggest parts of law enforcement, is to de-escalate a situation. So if you have I don't care if it's a minority of law enforcement who think that just going straight out with the use of force and they're not de-escalating situations, they're over-escalating situations. That's what we're seeing in the Black community. I'm from Chicago, where I'm a little sick, so excuse me, I'm kind of jumbled with my words, but
Hey, we can come back to you. David, you want to go ahead?
Yeah, thanks. So I can kind of go along the lines of what he just said. So I'm actually an Army MP for the Guard, and I work with the Joint Task Force out here in New York. And I will say that what happened in that case is absolutely wrong, and I don't agree with what that officer did. And I do believe that there may be a huge training issue. And the way that they actually engage the community. These cops, a lot of these cops that I'm seeing are treating the people as if almost like they're an enemy, or they're not individuals. They are like, when you do that and you're not looking at, hey, this is Bob from down the street, like I know him, hey, whatever, but you're seeing him as like, oh, he's a threat. They act a certain way. They act accordingly to a threat. I see people as people. When I'm out there, whether it be in, the subway stations, the airports, I'm like, hey, what's up, everybody? And talking to them as if they're humans and community. And that's the way you should be treating these people. I think there's a serious problem when it comes down to the training for these cops. And that's all I got to say for right now.
Solomon, I think you were next.
Yeah, I just had a little brief something that I kind of want to interject into the situation, because from my perspective, I believe what we fail to realize anytime we talk about police brutality, anytime we talk about these shootings, we never discuss accountability, right? There's some members on the panel who were former members of the military, right? So when we were in the military, we were under what's called the Uniform Code of Military Justice. So what could happen to us is we could be in an actual combat zone, receiving fire. And if we take out a civilian, guess what? They don't care. You're going to be in Fort Leavenworth breaking rocks. You understand what I'm saying? So to me, the part that I disagree with and the part that I don't understand is everybody says, thank you for your service. It's very hard to find a so-called conservative who is not pro-military. But when it comes to accountability, why are the police not held to the same standard? We're talking about a routine traffic stop versus being in an actual combat zone. And you know how you know you're in a combat zone? Because you're paid combat pay. You're paid hazardous duty pay. But what we're talking about is the side of a road with an unarmed combatant. If I'm in the military and I take out a civilian, then guess what? It was no, I thought he had a gun. All those people look the same. Look, they all look like they were going to scream Allahu Akbar and blow me up. I don't have that excuse. I'm going to go in front of a board and they're going to send me to Leavenworth, period. So my whole question is, why do the police get a pass that the military doesn't? And I'm not saying the military does have a pass, but once again, when I was in, we had a saying. It's Leavenworth over Arlington. So we fully understood that when I pulled that trigger, hey, if it happened to be a civilian, I'm trying to go back home. So once again, I'm not here to say that I don't understand what the police is going through. However, what I am saying is when I pulled the trigger and, oh, shoot, he was unarmed, I knew what my responsibility is. It just seems like right now, when it comes to the police, people want to give the police a pass. And what I'm saying is you can't guess. You understand what I'm saying? The same way we're there to, defend this country against all enemies, foreign and domestic, you're there to serve and protect. So if I'm there to serve and protect, the only way I can do that is if I have to be sure. And as a member of the military, I was willing to lay down my life for that. The same way with a police officer. If you're not willing to serve and protect and lay your life down, then I really don't know what to tell you at this point, because that's one of the problems that I see. I'm not saying that I think that these people should go away for like first degree murder or go away for or even like public executions. I know some people get kind of extreme, but what I am saying is there should be a system in place that holds you accountable if you engage with deadly force with someone who is unarmed and you're not in a life-threatening situation. Somebody can say, well, any traffic stop is a life-threatening situation. I'm saying, well, in the military, we're actually getting shot at. So it's a little different when we have to decide who we're going to pull the trigger with.
Thanks so much for that, Solomon. I agree. And I think that kind of brings us to our next question, right? How do we hold them accountable? Yes, there's civil litigation, right? But those payouts come from taxpayer money that's already built into the police budget. I know some people on Twitter specifically feel that we need to be policing ourselves, kind of like what Killer Mike preaches on his show and all his conferences he attends. Hotep Jesus, you're really quiet. What do you feel about this? I know you have a lot to say about it. I've seen the tweets.
That's still policing.
The installment of a state is inherently oppressive. The police are an extension of the state. They work for the state. Police aren't meant to protect property. Aren't meant to protect people. They're meant to protect property. We saw with the mass shooting, I think, happened down in Florida. And it went to Supreme Court. And he said the Supreme Court are the police supposed to protect people? And the Supreme Court said, no, that's not their job. And in fact, that is correct. Police were never, from the inception of it, were never created to protect people. They were hired by rich people to protect their property, sort of like private security. If you want to go back in history and look, you got to type in something called the Pinkertons, and you start understanding how police came about in America. There's a great movie with Forrest Whitaker. I think everybody should watch it. It's called The Experiment. It's based upon a book. And they take normal people, they throw them inside of a prison. They're just simply role playing. I think they have to do like 3 days or something like that. I forget how long it was. Some people dress up as COs. The rest of them dress up like prisoners, but they have to operate like it's a normal prison. Apparently, this was based upon a true story. You know what happened? Few days in, they whooping ass. The police are taking advantage of their position of power because they still have to act out the fact that these men have to go through certain procedures as a prisoner. So the power goes to their head. This is what they say, power corrupts and absolute power corrupts absolutely. So when you put somebody in a position of power who's not, you talk about training, police training, you don't want police. What you want are peace creators or peacemakers, people that are psychologically intelligent. Now, the physical training to become a cop is just way too low. You seen the cameras out there, you got, big boys out there, and it's just like, you ain't catching nobody, bro. And then you got some little dudes, and it's like, bro, like you need to hit the gym. So when you're looking at that, you're saying to yourself, well, I see why they're scared and why you'd be more likely to pull the trigger. But again, like I said, police aren't there to protect people. They're there to protect property. So, arguing about it is kind of like pointless.
And I think we are disregarding the fact, and I say we as a populace, that these officers come in to the force with bias. It's so deeply ingrained into them, they don't know they have it. So we expect someone who's lived their whole life, in a certain environment to be thrown, to the wolves, so to speak. Like, let's use New York as an example, right? You go into Brooklyn, now it's gentrified, but at a certain point it wasn't, right? And they go in and they're just reacting. They're not thinking, no one's waking up every day saying, I'm gonna go kill some niggas today. That's not what's happening. Like they're not putting on the badge and all that shit for 30 minutes to go to work and say, how many did you kill today? We have to just admit that that's not what happens. What happens is they get put in a situation that they're not prepared for, and that's due to the training and that's due to upbringing. They need to be tested psychologically. Whatever they're doing is not effective at this point, because cops have a high rate of suicide, alcoholism, and domestic violence. So if these people were really as normal as they say they are when they're passing these tests, they wouldn't be beating the shit out their wives when they leave for the day. They wouldn't be drinking while they're on the job. They're not mentally in the right state of mind to have this power to begin with. So I'm not shocked that now we're getting a result where people are dying. And yes, there is a higher amount of white people dying at the hands of police. But as of 2020, I believe there was 43 white people killed by police and 35 Black people. The math still don't add up because we're less than the population than white people are. So then we say, okay, well, these police must be in, impoverished or overpopulated areas, right? With more Black people, which then it's like, okay, but if they're used to being in these areas and they've been on the force for years, then they should be used to dealing with these people at that point. There is a learning curve that has to happen when you start policing a certain area of color. You have to adapt, you have to reach out, there has to be bonds formed. And I think that's no longer happening. There's no attempt to connect at all with majority of these situations. Lonnie, go ahead, and then Talisha.
Yeah, just a little bit about me. So I have a community-oriented policing background, went to the police academy, graduated. Around that time, a little bit later in my career, Baltimore happened. I was in Baltimore for like 150 days. That's how became popular, got recognized by the president's lawyer, opened up for him, spoke on some councils, right? So anyways, all that being said, with my law enforcement background, what I'm observing is there's so many different positions, right? And the reality of it is, I believe all those positions are correct. Sometimes racism is a factor. Sometimes liberal policy is a factor. Sometimes you got some forces, they just terribly governed. Sometimes when officers are overworked, then they come home and their wife wants time and they've been working 2 12-hour shifts. They're stressed, they beat the hell. So all of these factors, play a part. But the reality of it is that's what we have the law for. And so I think that we've come to a turning point in America where we have to advance the policy. So for example, if I go to a biblical example, the law of Moses was to, It was to set boundaries between us. Just a biblical example. I'm not super religious, so don't think that, right? So these laws stop people from being human beings against other human beings, right? So my point is human beings do evil things. These things are going to happen, but we need to have effective law. We need to elevate policy to improve this condition. At this point in the nation, it's, whether it's true or false, whether it's hysteria, whether it's MSN, it's just dangerous, right? And so my frustration with many opinions is, I just feel at this point, how do we rally together and push the government to make effective policy? Because there's so many factors, and they all happen. Listen, I live in a city where I got called colored 4 weeks ago. And I live in a city where I'm pushing for community-oriented policing constantly, and they just like, oh, that's economic hemorrhage. That's fiscally irresponsible. But what happens if I go talk about mass incarceration, if I talk about the breaking up of the Black family, oh, we don't want to hear that. Or you just criticizing, you're race baiting. No, it's so many different positions and factors. We've got to become honest about the situation. We've got to improve policy, and we've got to be real. People's hearts don't change because of our perspectives. People's hearts just don't change. We just set boundaries, and if people cross boundaries, they need to be penalized. And so I think for law enforcement, we've just come to the place now where we've got to reform policy. And this has been my big thing, and I've mentioned it to you before about the whole Candace situation. I feel like Candace or Brandon Tatum, I said no problem. I have no problem with them, but I have a problem with their conversation. This is the moment where conservatives can come to the table, Black conservatives can say, hey, like we go and we sit down with President Trump, Oval Office or wherever it is, hey, President Trump, we really, really need to reform these things. And we believe that you are the president that wants to reform these things, because the Democrats haven't done HBCUs. Obama is supposed to be Mr. My Brother's Keeper. He's supposed to be over the whole Black young men's college program. But what did he do for HBCUs? He's supposed to have freed 38,000 Black folk. President.
Sorry, what we're not going to do is down Obama. We're not about to do that. So what we're not going to do is down another Black man in power, because at the end of the day, this is a Black panel talking about Black issues. So whether we agree with Obama's politics or not, we're not going to do that here today. That's a different conversation. And I say the same thing whenever somebody say Michelle Obama is ugly and look like, nah, we're not about to disrespect people just because we disagree with their political beliefs. Talisha, go ahead. You got to unmute.
I'm sorry. My perspective is this. I always tell people I have a useless college degree I got. And $60,000 in debt behind it, but it's one class I would have paid $60,000 for. And I think everyone, including police officers, should take it. And it's called psychology. Now you have to understand the minds of things. You have to understand the minds of people. Most people in law enforcement, not all, they have a hire of people that was picked on in school, was the quote unquote the nobody, so they get authority jobs and take advantage of it. Now when you policing, first of all, anyone, if you want to be a police, that's the hardest job to me in America, military and police, because every day you walk out your door, you don't know if you coming home, because you don't know what you go to violence while we run from violence. You know what I'm saying? So if you is the type of person that's not fit and scared and fidgety, you shouldn't be a police officer, because these are the cases that we are dealing with. Not all of them. I ain't even talking about, not even just with Black on white police officer, any police officer in general when it comes to people. Like I remember one time growing up in the projects, we had some police officers, and you know how they train some people and bring them. So it was one white guy that was getting trained. Now the other white guys and the other Black police officers, they knew us in the projects because they patrolled our neighborhood, but they had one that they was training. His interaction with us was way different from the other white people and the other Black people that's there, because he never been around or seen nothing like this. You know what I'm saying? They'll come down there, man, put y'all weed up, stop drinking. Like, man, if I catch you making a play, you going to jail, versus somebody that might be like, there they go, get him. He got an open container. Let's arrest him. This is that. I think that's just where the disconnect come in at. And police officers need to call out. I think if police officers step up to the plate and call out wrong people, I don't care what color it is, I don't care what color the person is that this crime, anything happened with, I think that it'd be better. They do need reform. I think it needs to be reform where they get some type of mental check before they become police officers. Because I don't think you should have this stigma with whoever and be a policeman. If I think this of a Black man, if I think this of a white man when I go here, how do you think that's going to come off? So I think that's what it is. I think that the training need to go back to their minds. Are you psychologically built for this? Are you psychologically built when something happened like this? What your reaction go? Because it's life and death reaction in it. And I think if they call out their own kind and it start from the bottom with the up from the top, from the reform with them, things will be better. And I think us as Black people, me having 2 Black sons, I have 2 Black sons. They 19 and one 17. I don't tell my kids about nothing about the police. I don't tell my kids, okay, the white man trying to kill you with the police. When you see I don't tell my kids that. I tell my kids, you respect authority figures. If anybody say anything wrong to you, let your mama handle it. I got this. But what you gonna do is be respectful. If I tell my son that house over there, that blue house, is the boogeyman, what the fuck I'm sorry. What the hell you think they gonna do when they walk past it? They gonna be like, that's the boogeyman. They scared, they tense, everybody looking stupid. And that's even from the officer. If officers look like, okay, we down there with these thugs, what they gonna do? They gonna, so you know what I'm saying? I ain't never tell my kids nothing like that, because I don't want my kids to have no stigma like that. My kids go past the police, they don't do nothing. They ain't afraid of them, because I didn't feel that on them.
That point kind of leads to the solution, right? So if more people that look like us are in positions of power, we're less prone to be intimidated by them, and vice versa, right? Because I hear that a lot from very far right conservatives, like, oh, these people are just frightened, by the situations and the people they're walking into. They don't know what's going to happen. Yeah, because they're not familiar with the culture. Of course, they don't know, right?
I just make a point to that. My point to be to that is, you know how like Naomi, you from up there, and I'm from Cleveland. When I bring you to my hood, I'm gonna tell you certain things like, don't say nothing to this person, that, that warrant. You know what I'm saying? This is what you tell the police. Okay, this community, we have this person like this, don't mad him. All he gonna do is cuss you out. He a drunk, he don't mean no harm. That's what you do. If I bring somebody down on 30, if I'm gonna give you the ins and outs, I'm gonna make sure you okay. But I'm gonna tell you, like, don't even pay this no attention. This might happen. This might jay off. Like that. I mean, I don't understand how hard that is.
Chris, I want to hear from you. I know you were pretty vocal about this online. Did you have anything to say about this in terms of where we go from here? I know, like, Talisha has offered up the solution of just educating our youth on not being anti-police, just getting rid of that rhetoric. I've offered up, encouraging our youth to become officers. Because I know, like, in Philly, you become an officer, you a snitch, period. Like, we not messing with you no more. You're not coming down the block. Like, it's a couple exceptions that'll be like, yo, that was my man from high school. He cool. But other than that, that stigma carries no matter what.
It's really a systemic problem. I mean, I remember Amadou Diallo when he was shot at 41 times. It wasn't only white cops doing that. It was all. I think it was 2 Black dudes out of the 4, I believe. But the police, the relationship the police currently have with the community is a very adversarial one. They very much take the position of occupier, so to speak. I know some people may get upset at that word, but very often, I mean, everybody stands out in the hood. You outside chilling, you see them out, here come the cops. What everybody do? They move, they reposition, they feel funny. Because, they just might roll up on you just because. So if you're going to train them to treat the people they're supposed to police like, if you're gonna treat them like combatants, enemy combatants, we're gonna see death all the time. And this is what we see too much of the time. A lot of these police receive training, counter-terrorism training. How counter-terrorism training gonna help you like on the block? You know, so already they're already coming at you in a specific way with a specific mindset that this could be very dangerous. Most of us are not standing outside with hammers in our pants, the vast majority of us. Are there some? Absolutely. But even a smaller number of people are willing to pull out and, you know, open fire on the police. That's something that doesn't happen. That's not a frequent occurrence. Not saying it doesn't occur. So the training may or may not help, but you have to treat the community like a people and not a problem. So once the stations and stuff become more localized, it should be okay, hopefully. But
I like
you
that.
know,
I like that phrase. Yeah, I like that phrase. Shekinah, did you have anything you wanted to add?
I think one of the biggest things that I have a problem with when it comes to police brutality is the polarization surrounding the issue and the negative relationship that law enforcement has with the Black community and vice versa. I think it's something that is perpetuated by the media. And I also think it's perpetuated by resistance and also by stigmas that certain police officers have about Black people and how they're going to act in certain situations. I don't believe that this is an epidemic. Even if you look in 2019, there were only 41 people that were shot unarmed. But I do believe that we can hold people accountable and we can make certain changes that would actually make a positive impact in communities. I like a lot of what everybody said, and I think all of those things are really important to how we're going to move forward and how we could actually build communities that respect law enforcement and vice versa. I think, again, that's one of the biggest issues that the media capitalizes on, is the ability to polarize different communities of people, and it creates division. And I think that if we could create an atmosphere that was more unifying, that would make a serious difference in how our communities are policed and how people react to the police as well.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think unification should be the goal. And, you know, I want to just kind of touch on some of the comments we're getting on YouTube, right? For me cutting Lonnie off regarding Obama. And I think this kind of leads to what you were saying specifically about division, right? I'm seeing mostly on Twitter, and I'm sure all of you have seen it, there are people literally picking sides. And every part of me is torn because, you know, I have a Black son, but at the same time, me or my son, you know, we aren't dark enough in some people's eyes to be the victim of brutality. Like, I've come into instances with the police many times. My mother's been in jail many times, almost everybody in my family, and none of them were brutalized. Like, literally every experience was top notch. And I'm not even gonna lie, they were giving way more special treatment than they should have been. You know, and I don't know if that's because we just got great officers or if it's because of how we look, you know, and I think it is a colorism thing as well, you know, as just an African-American thing. But I think us having this view of everything is based in politics is the number one factor why we're not going to be united. Anytime something happens, I just keep hearing, well, it's because of Obama did this or Trump did this. That has nothing to do with our children right here rioting, teenagers, you know, trying to protest. Look, we can all say Antifa, right, until we go to sleep tonight. But at the end of the day, let's just keep it real and keep it 100. There are teenagers out there acting up, robbing Louis. There is Antifa out there too. But then there's also a big part of the crowd that is doing the right thing. So what do you think is gonna happen? Like, look at New York, when the police come out there and they tell you, everybody just spread out a little bit, you know, spread out a little bit, chill. And y'all wanna get smart. They're going to start throwing tear gas. They're going to start, you know, doing what they have to do to take control of the situation. And then we want to cry police brutality, when in fact, everyone in the crowd should really be trying to mitigate those circumstances themselves before the police even have to get involved. So I'm sorry if I cut you off, Lonnie, but I'm just not in the mood, honestly, today to say, oh, Obama did this or Trump did that. I don't fucking care, and I don't want to hear it. And anybody that has a problem with me saying that does not have to watch. You can watch everyone's opinion on their own YouTube and Twitter. But this is what we're going to do on this channel. We're uniting Black people. This isn't for the white followers, okay? This is for us, our community. Now, if you're not a person of color and you want to jump on board, come on. You're more than welcome. I want you to come on, but don't come on board if you're pushing a political talking point and trying to further your agenda that you're for Black people. Don't come on board with that. We don't need that right now. That ain't what we need. We need you to stand right there in front of the cop while we hold up a sign with a camera and tell you about what's going on in our community. We need you to be there to make sure we're safe and to back us up. We don't need the bullshit, okay? Don't come out here with a camera like Scott Pressler and just come back in 3 months when, you know, another camera comes out. That ain't what we want right now. So I just really had to get that off my chest as we wrap up, because that's the whole point I even did this panel, to be honest with you. I'm just sick of it. I'm sick of it. Who he hasn't been on yet. I don't know if he's still here, but Curlin, are you here? Is your camera on? Because I'm not seeing you.
Yeah, I'm on. How's it going?
Perfect. Okay, so Curlin, you're not a conservative, right?
Well, yeah, I don't identify as like that. I do have some views in line with that ideology, but I'm really not a label person. But so that's my only issue with it.
Okay, so tell us a little bit how you feel, because I know being a lawyer, you have more insight than I think anybody else on this panel in regard to what plays out after the fact.
I mean, well, from the legal perspective, I think that, you know, we all agree that something bad happened and the law is going to play its course. And if it's determined that he acted criminally, then he's going to have to pay the consequences for that, right? And so when I look at it as a human being and as a lawyer, my first instinct is that he should be in jail. Now, they're going to do an investigation. They're going to find out what has to happen there. But one thing I wanted to mention was, I think the beauty of America is that we're a diverse country and we have people from different backgrounds and different cultures. But one issue that we have is that, unfortunately, you have people from different cultures policing other people, right? And I think that I think we're too tribal for that to be a successful thing that we keep up, because I think there's something about the visual. It doesn't matter whether it's right, whether it's wrong, whether he was resisting arrest, whether he wasn't resisting arrest. I think there's something about the visual of a white officer with his knee on the neck of a Black man that, as a society, we just cannot stomach it. And, you know, many other countries, they don't have that issue because they're monolithic, right? So you have Asian people policing Asian people, or you have, you know, African people policing African people. And so even when brutality happens, it's not as distasteful because you don't associate a negative intent with it. But in America, anytime a white officer has a bad encounter with a Black person, it makes us think of the worst parts of society. And I do believe that we should seriously think about people of the culture communicate, policing the people, like sharing the same culture with the people you police. Because anytime you have a visual like that, you're gonna have a problem. And if this guy doesn't go to jail, if he's not convicted, this whole thing is gonna bubble back up again. So I just wanted to share that perspective.
Naomi, you're muted. You're muted.
Thank you. I'm like, why is everybody pointing to me? I was just saying, as we end the conversation, right? How do we go about securing convictions for officers who are not in line with the rest, right? How do we go about preaching this I'm reading the comments here. I'm sorry. Preaching this unification to our children, to the community, and have that position where we want to have ties and bonds with the forest. Bryson, you always got so much to say. How do we do it? Huh? How do we do it?
Bryson, the bad guy. Yes, sir. He is here. Listen, I feel like part of it is we have to acknowledge the facts, though. Like I feel like I like a lot of what everybody has said. To be honest, even though I feel like I disagree with y'all a lot that everybody said I agree with, but we have to acknowledge that this isn't that much of a problem. It is a problem, but like I said in the beginning, you have good people and you have bad people. That's not going to change. I don't care what type of test you give them, psychology test. I don't care if you have black people only in the black neighborhoods. I guarantee you situations will still happen because we are all still human at the end of the day. I would like to see these things tried and hopefully they'll work. But if you don't account humanity into it, then you're going to be disappointed at the end of the day. So this is not that big of a problem, and people should be punished for breaking the law because a lot of these things are already illegal that they're doing. The thing the police officer did to George Floyd, already illegal. So we've got to make sure that he is prosecuted to the full extent of the law. I just feel like even if you take race out of it, the same things will occur if you don't realize that fact.
No, I agree to a certain extent with that statement, right? Even if we had all black people policing black people, toxic masculinity is going to play a part no matter what, right? And that just happens every day.
But if it was all black people, the response wouldn't be so hateful, right? Like when you see the video, the video psychologically, it has an impact on people that makes them really frustrated. So if you had black people policing black people, you'd be pissed off, but you'd say, well, at least it's black people on black people. And unfortunately, we're comfortable with people of the same culture doing negative things to the other person. It's not right, but we're more comfortable with it.
Talisha and then David, and then we'll close out.
Well, I want to say something to the one that was just talking. What's your name? Kirk. What's his name? I don't want to mess up nobody's name, but
Curlin.
I'm Curlin, yeah.
Curlin, I'm sorry. All right, forget it. My tongue tied. But when you just said we need to have like more black people policing, and then like it's gonna be something that's gonna be the same as the black on black crime. No one's gonna care. It's just gonna be more black people killing more black people just to happen to be a cop. Like that's we are not around just black people. You encounter all cultures. The thing is not that if you are if you are policing a certain community, know the community. Where if it's the rich white folks, the rich black folks, the poor black folks, the poor white folks. Whatever community that these police officers are policing in, they need to understand and know their community. And then the reform needs to start from the head. I think every police station need to go back and start it over with police training. With some of these people need to be given pink slips because you're not built for this life. I'm not built to be a police officer because I don't know. My man, I can't cope like that. You know what I'm saying? Like if I get into an altercation with somebody, that's probably why God took my rights away with me having a gun, because I've been shot a whole bunch of people quick. You know what I'm saying? So I don't be a cop because that ain't me. And I appreciate the cops, but the cops is gonna have to turn around and say, look, you is making it worse for us. It's time to get rid of the bad apples. And when you tell on these folks, that's just like being a snitch. This is like being a snitch in the hood. When you snitch in the police force with the police station, what they call that, the cold blue, not a whole police force mad at you. So you have people that don't say nothing. We have to break the culture. This is the same culture we have to. It's two cultures got to be broken, and it's the black community and it's the police community. The black community have to stop what they doing and stop letting JoJo kill they auntie, and then we don't do nothing because they riding it. I just put it down. Y'all riding. My people just got shot in his face. Ain't nobody going to get him. But you think I'm about to go down there and ride about a white man killed a black man? You got me, man. I ain't that. If anything, I'm gonna go ride for my peoples. You got people downtown protesting in Cleveland, Ohio. I know them personally. I know they know the people that killed their people. But you downtown protest about a white man.
And they putting on Instagram, free my man, Ron and them. They ain't even do nothing.
But see, that's what the disconnect comes with both parties, the police community and the Black community. We got to put that stigma off. Now, if I went out and killed somebody and I was with you and I committed the crime and killed somebody, of course, if I get caught, I ain't gonna tell you. See, we need to know two different types of snitching. But if you do something wrong and I ain't got nothing to do with it, I'm telling on your ass. And they need to stop the police station in the Black community. This is the crazy part about the whole situation. The Black community and the cops got the same problems. It's like we two people with the same problems, but we pointing the finger at one another. Y'all, they got the same culture. They got the no snitch culture over there. You got the no snitch culture over here. You got the people that's gonna back us over here. You got the people that's gonna back us over here. It is what it is. If that don't change, I mean, we gonna keep on getting what we getting.
David, and then we'll go to Wayne, and that'll be it.
Yeah, just real quick, man. In this situation, I'm gonna put the onus on the cops. All right, the community is not wrong for their, outrage on what the cops did here. But what I'm gonna say is this: I think this is a failure of leadership at all echelons of the police force here. Something that never really gets brought up in this in the arguments is police have EEO guidelines. They have policies in place that deal with anything of discriminatory nature. All right. And so it's the same thing with the Army, right? And I'm one of those that's extremely sensitive about this when I deal with my soldiers, all right? If there's any sort of discrimination, they will fall underneath an investigation, and they'll be dealt with if they're dealing with guidelines of anything of race, nationality, gender, creed, sexual orientation, right? That is your EEO guidelines, right? These cops need to be holding themselves accountable. And I really can't look at the populace right now on this. I got to look at what are we doing within our internal organizations as law enforcement, and why are these captains or sergeants or even above, why are they not enforcing it? And if they're not, why is the mayor, not getting involved? Why is, like the local politics not saying, hey, you know what, enough is enough? Because when we talk about reform, there's already a policy in place, but they're not actually enforcing it correctly. And I think that we need to, get as a community and say, hey, you will enforce these guidelines. If you're not, you're gone as a leader within the police force. And that's what I want to say.
I've been listening to everybody, and one thing that that keeps going back to me, and it sounds like some of y'all have hit on it, is how police protect themselves. No matter what color they are when they go in, they usually say to each other, "You're part of the family. You're part of the force." So if something goes on that ain't right, they usually protect themselves. That what blue wall is that what it's called, or whatever it's called? And David was just talking about the EEO guidelines. It's almost like the guidelines are superseded by that culture that they have, that nobody has been able, none of the new captains, none of the new lieutenants or majors have been able to say, look, we need to break that down. We need to cut that down. We need, like the young woman said, Felicia, start new. I mean, these captains should be like, well, okay, all that stuff is out. We're trying to clean up this so that we can do a better job out there, because many of you have said, well, maybe if we put black cops in black neighborhoods. Well, guess what? The black cops are looked on as white cops when they come to the neighborhood, because usually most of the time they put a black cop with a white cop. So when they come into the neighborhood, it's almost like, oh man, here they come. And when the black cop is trying to talk to you, man, you just like them. So there needs to be some education on our side so that we aren't afraid, because I know my children aren't afraid of cops. My children aren't afraid of cops. But then, like I've heard so many people say tonight, that the atmosphere or the culture inside the police also needs to be fixed from the top down, and then start having those meetings and stuff on a regular basis where, we come knocking on your door, start walking through the neighborhood again, talking to people, explaining, well, this is I've even seen some cops dancing with some kids sometimes. Hey, I mean, you know, if that's what you got to do, that's what you got to do. But I mean, we just have to change the way that we look at things and also call things out. If it's wrong, you call it out. You know, don't be afraid to call it out, because you never know if something's going to happen to your family or your friends. So you got to call this stuff out.
I think that's a perfect note to end on. People are quiet until it happens to them. And then when you have that outrage, right? People want to say, well, wait a minute, you can't be outraged because of this, or you can't be outraged because of that. They try to dictate the level at which you can be frustrated. That's what gets me out of all this. You know, I think we have to have mutual respect for everyone, just as being human beings, taking race out of it. Like, you know, at the end of the day, we all have a family. We all have priorities. We all want our loved ones to get home safe and to have positive interactions with whoever they're coming in contact with throughout the day. And for us to perpetuate these stereotypes like fuck the police, or, you know, burn it to the ground, it does nothing. Short term, it might, you know, short term, it might. Has it in the past? Debatable. It really is debatable. There are some instances where rioting has done nothing. There are certain instances where burning a city to the ground has. You know, Philadelphia 1964 riots made a change. But there are other parts of the country that never made a change. It did nothing. So I think that's where a lot of people are disagreeing. But as Wayne said, you know, let's focus on saying something when we see something, whether it's political or not in nature. That shouldn't negate the fact that you still have an obligation as a person of color to speak up, period. You do, we all do, you know, and I want to thank everybody for coming on this panel. All of their social medias will be linked in the description. I want to thank y'all for being civil. I appreciate it. You know, thank everybody in the comments for trying to be civil. They was really stirring that pot, you know, they was getting me. But we came back. So I hope you guys have a good evening. And thanks again. This will be posted probably in the next hour or so.